Mm. Okay, and let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody who's joining us. This is a Hangout to answer questions that were voted up on Google Moderator about Gmail in general and about Gmail's new look specifically. So we'll try to divide our time between those two topics and go through the questions that you guys asked. So I'm Sarah. I'm the Gmail Community Manager. I thought maybe we could start introducing the Gmail team, and then maybe the Gmail users who joined us can introduce themselves as well.
Okay.
So Alex, do you maybe want to
Yeah, should we go left to right?
Sure.
Okay, cool. My name's Alex Corley. I'm the lead product manager on Gmail.
Maybe Jason, you want to?
And I guess this is confusing, so two Jasons side by side. I'm Jason Cornwell. I'm the design lead for Gmail.
And I'm Mark Striebeck, the engineering director for Gmail front-end development.
Okay, and I think that's our Gmail team right now. Maybe the users, do you want to introduce yourselves? Warren, I see you. Why don't you go ahead?
My name is Warren. I'm a Gmail TC.
Manny, you want to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Manny. I live in the UK and I'm a Gmail TC.
And Jason?
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm actually switched microphone, so hopefully this is better. But I'm just a sales engineer that our company uses Google Apps.
Cool, and I also see Brett here. Brett, are you able to talk? Is your mic working? Okay, I don't hear Brett, but we also have Brett, who's another Gmail user and Gmail TC. Okay, so our first question, we'll start with the general questions. So our first question came from Craig in Texas, and he wanted to know, when can we expect an overhaul on tasks? They're great to use, but severely lacking in functionality, such as due dates, reminders, Android integration, etc. Maybe Alex, do you want to try that one?
Yeah, sure. So the task team is actually a separate team to Gmail. There's a team there that's working on it and working pretty closely with other teams across Google. I'm not really the best person to, I think, go into details on tasks, but I can tell you that I've had a bunch of meetings with those guys, and they're very passionate about the whole area and what they can do to improve the task products, and they know it has a lot of feature requests. When I spoke to them, they said I could definitely tell you the good things are coming, but I couldn't tell you exactly what or exactly when in the grand scheme of secrecy there, I'm afraid. But I know that those teams are working hard on developments to that particular kind of product, and you should expect to see some changes coming up in the future.
Great, thanks, Alex. So our second question is from Dag R. from Stockholm. He'd like to know, when will attach file give me access to more than just my local drive? For instance, Picasa, Google Docs, or other email attachments. Mark, I thought maybe that was a good question for you.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually a great question, because we started looking exactly into this type of functionality at the end of last year. And so as always, when we integrate services at Google, we have to look into the user experience, interoperability, security. So we're looking into all this very actively right now, but can hopefully launch this, of course, something of this, maybe not exactly this functionality, but some type of functionality like this year.
Cool. That sounds great. Okay. Our next question was from Jimmy Lee in Durham, and he would like to know, why does the gtalk function of Gmail behave differently from the gtalk function in Google+, such as the emoticons that will animate, I'm thinking particularly of the Nyan cat here maybe, and the behavior of stale conversations, like when they pop up. And Mark, that sounds like another good one for you.
Yeah. It's similar to what I said before. Like we have, again, interoperability between two products, and when we actually worked on Google Plus last year, we wanted to let that team focus on their user experience and their features. So we didn't want to slow them down too much with all the other products at Google saying, look, you have to implement this feature, you have to do this, you have to do this. So we arrived at this point where the features are slightly different, and we're also working very hard to reconcile this. So hopefully also this year, we will actually have a much, much more common, almost the same, or hopefully pretty much the same experience across these products.
Yeah, that would be nice, but again, the challenges of working with services that split. I know I see sometimes questions around, contacts and chat and these things that go across our services. So.
Yeah.
Cool. So our next question is from Atif in Dubai. And Atif, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Atif wants to know, why can't Gmail notifications, such as new email arrival, contact, birthday, etc., be listed on the Google bar's red notification box? And I imagine Atif is probably thinking particularly of like that box that we have for Google Plus notifications that tell you, when somebody shared a post with you or commented on your post.
Yeah, let me take that, Sarah. I think first of all, it's a really great idea. It's something that I want to. That notification bar is actually kind of conceived by the Google Plus team as part of that kind of Google Plus effort as a better way to kind of notify people about exciting things that are happening in their social circles, across Google. We've actually been having some discussions with them explicitly on this in the last few weeks, and again, this is an area where I think we agree it's a great feature request. We want to do it in a way that makes sense for all of our users, so that we don't end up kind of really overloading that box with notifications and making it less useful, but actually putting the most important notifications and content right there for you to be able to see. So again, we're working with the Google Plus team. You guys will have seen actually integrations between Google Plus and Gmail in the last few months, and there's many more to come, and I think this is one of the areas that we're very excited about.
Great. Yeah, I know I've seen a lot of questions from our Google Plus users in particular who want to know about, the future of Gmail and Google Plus integrations and whether we're planning anything. So. Our next question is from Chip Whitley in Chicago. And Chip wants to know, why do I have to go into the drop-down menu to mark a message as unread? Why not have the Mark Read button toggle read and unread?
So, I mean, the Mark as Read button, actually, I think that's a lab, one of the labs that I use. And so, as with all of those labs, sometimes it's not as complete as a full feature would be. But I think this is a really good suggestion. And, I think we'll look into it as we look at that lab and as we, think about what we want to do with it in the future. But this is a very good suggestion. It seems like a smart way for it to work.
Cool. Our next question is one I've seen a couple times before as well. It's from Ashlyn in Argentina. And Ashlyn wants to know, why can't I label an outgoing mail while it's being composed? I have to wait for the receiver to reply to be able to do that, or I have to go into all mail to label it. I've also seen sort of a similar question around being able to star a message also when you send it out. So, Alex, maybe that's another good one for you.
Yeah. Again, this is another good idea. It's a feature request that I think we talked, on the forums a little bit about over the last sort of year or so, and we're looking into it. One of the big challenges here, and one of the biggest challenges always for a product like Gmail, is making sure that we balance the power of these types of functionality with, the appropriate use of the user interface. So, making sure that we're not kind of overwhelming the user by kind of adding lots and lots of different options on those views. Compose view is one of those areas where we've actually managed to keep it kind of reasonably simple. But this is, I think this is one area where, we're definitely looking into it. And, we've heard that feature request, before, and I think, there's definitely some work that we can do there.
Great. Our next question, I'm, again, not going to be able to pronounce this name very well, and I'm really sorry, but it's Tithafug, or maybe Tithafug. And Tithafug is in Long Island and wants to know, can we have better integration with other services? For example, having the same labels available in all services, like voice and calendar. And he had a second question about bringing phones via location detection with Latitude. I think that one might be a little bit outside the realm of Gmail, but the first part of his question about having labels across services kind of is a little similar to the question Mark was answering about Talk, but I thought maybe, Alex, you could try that one too.
Yeah, and I think, again, here, we're definitely trying to make using various different Google products, a more seamless integrated experience. So, an example I think that you've seen that's kind of along these lines is now, when you've set up circles inside Google+, those are automatically available to you as kind of automated labels inside Gmail as a way to kind of organize your organize your mail, and I think we're always looking at ways that we can kind of share some of these concepts across Google services. I don't think we've always done that great a job of it in the past, and some of that's to do with the way that our technology stacks work and the way that we've developed products, but it's definitely a big focus going forward. So I think definitely here, as I say, we've started to make some steps here with the ability to see some of these Google Plus concepts inside Gmail and on other Google properties too, and you should expect to see more integrations of that nature as we move forward through the year. Mark talked a little bit about being able to attach Google Docs and the likes as well is another good example.
Great. I'm sure people will look forward to that. So, Jeff Kubina from Columbia would like to know, could you please add from my contacts or from name of circle or group to the possible values of the from search operator? And again, I've seen this request a couple times as far as usually people want to filter based on that criteria. They want to be able to filter on a contact group or a circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I just mentioned we launched actually at the end of last year the circle labels. So that you can kind of navigate through the label list on the left-hand side of Gmail right now, and we're actually we're just looking at how we kind of take that and generalize it into the search operator, and you should expect to see something on this, we hope, fairly soon. We think there are a few little kind of areas for us to work out, so we don't have anything that we can kind of explicitly announce right now. But definitely, it's an obvious next step from that labeling that we've been starting, and we're working on it.
Great. We have another question from Dag R. from Stockholm. He also wanted to know, will we someday get a preview of OpenOffice files like .odt? That sounds again like more of an engineering side question. I don't know if Mark, you want to try that one?
Yeah, it's actually a good idea. The thing is, document viewing is actually done, although it shows up in Gmail, by another team. So I can follow up with that team if and where that is on their priority list, and maybe we can share that later. But yeah, it's basically whatever they support. That's something that we can pick up in Gmail, so as we do it today with PDF and other formats, and that would be another format to add there.
That sounds great, Mark. Okay, I want to ask one more question, and then at that point we'll have gone through the top 10 from the Google moderator for general stuff in Gmail. I'm going to take a quick look at the comments on this post and see if there's anything else that we're not really covering, and then maybe we'll move on to the new look questions. So the last one from the moderator is from Alex in Germany, popular name it seems. And he wants to know, will it be possible to change the email address or add aliases without creating a second Gmail account in the future? Maybe Alex, if you want to try to answer, Alex.
Yeah, I'm just trying to parse out that question. So he wants to be able to add additional email accounts.
Add a second email address or alias without adding a separate account, or change your email address without creating a separate account. One time I've seen this a lot is if somebody created maybe a less professional Gmail username, but then they have all their docs and their calendars there, and then they want to be able to add a more professional username. Yeah, so actually, as of today, I mean, you can, if you create a new Gmail account, or if you create a new account on another domain, we actually have a flow to be able to kind of authorize your existing Gmail account to both receive email from that address and also to be able to send email as that address. In the Settings and Accounts tab, and you can get that set up as long as it's an address that you that you own and are in full control of, and that's probably the best way to kind of make this happen right now. So there's actually I think there's probably a pretty decent Help Center article on this. I think I know that because I have my Gmail set up in exactly this way, and I'm pretty confident I didn't work out how to do it on my own. So I can definitely grab that Help Center article and put it in the comments of the post to make sure that Alex gets to see exactly how that works. Cool. I'm sorry, I realized there's one extra question on the moderator that I missed. and I just want to make sure we get a chance to answer that too. Sorry, my eyes skipped the line. But I was wondering, the question was, will you ever add the possibility to sort emails by size? And I know I've seen that one a couple times before too.
Yeah, I think here we generally, one of the things that I've tried to do when folks have asked me about this is kind of drill into the need. And I think oftentimes the need here is that people want to be able to find larger emails and delete them. Either maybe they're coming up against their storage limit, or they're just trying to be good housekeepers. And we definitely want to meet that need. It's actually technically pretty challenging for us just in terms of the way that our search backend works. But I know that it's something that we're hoping that we will eventually be able to meet the need of going forward. Mark, I don't know whether you wanted to add any color about the complexity of the searching approach that we take in Gmail.
No, I mean, you said it right. I mean, based on the storage infrastructure that we have in Gmail, it's not a straightforward create a query sort by this. But yeah, you're right. I mean, what we're actually thinking more about, because that's usually where it comes from. It's not so much that people really need to know what is the biggest, but people usually want to know, okay, what are the emails that I can delete, that I don't hit my storage limit, or that I stay away from the limit for another half year. So that's something. At this point, it's not so much about sorting, but it's basically giving, okay, here are the biggest emails that you have, or the biggest attachments. So that's something that we definitely look into, how we can expose this in a good and user-friendly way.
Great. So I looked at the comments. The questions actually were mostly answered so far, except for one about the new look, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. There was a question about undo. The question was from John B., who said, need to add an undo button. I accidentally deleted hours of work on an email and for some reason couldn't get it back. Undo would have saved my work. So I know we do have an undo. If you discard a draft, there's a yellow bar at the top that appears. And I know we also have an undo send feature that people have, I know has saved me many a time. I don't know if Alex or Mark want to comment any further on other undo options.
I mean, I think we try to be pretty comprehensive in offering people undos when they're performing actions that could be destructive. So if there is a particular path that this user ended up kind of going through where we didn't show one, I certainly would love to kind of dig into it a bit more detail and figure out where that is. There are obviously lots and lots of different ways to navigate through the application, and lots of different ways to access it. So I guess it's possible that there's a there with show the undo, or maybe the undo didn't stick around for long enough, or something like that. But definitely something action. We either have a
Sorry, we're getting some feedback.
Oh.
There. Okay, I think I got it. So we lost the last little bit of that, Alex. They might have deleted it. I know when I do that myself, I usually just hit Control or Command Z, and usually my text comes back through my browser's undo function. But
yeah, that can be one thing. Plus generally as well, when people delete emails, we try and put them in trash rather than delete them forever immediately. So that again, you have another way to be able to kind of get it back. But yeah, that's one of our goals, is to make sure that folks don't end up in situations like that. So definitely keen to understand some more detail about the way that happened.
Great. So, somebody want to add something?
Yeah, I had a question. I don't know if this is an open
Sure.
forum or how this structure works.
That's right. You had a question about contacts as well, right? We'll save the signature question, but if you want to ask your contacts question.
No, this is actually about the issue we just talked about with the undo. I was just suggesting, I don't know what kind of technology is in place for the Google Docs setup where you can save versions and things like that, but I assume that he's talking about the same feature where you'd be able to have version control with your emails.
Yeah, and we obviously work with the Docs team and talk to the Docs team a lot, about how the two products should work really well together. So they have a really powerful kind of collaborative editing suite there that does a lot of that kind of like per keystroke change management and the like. So there's potentially something there in the future. At the same time, it's like a much more heavyweight experience sort of composing a doc than it is composing an email. So we want to be careful about the way that we do that too.
All right. Anything else anybody wants to add? All right, let's move on to the new look. So before we start, I thought maybe we could just take a couple seconds to talk about generally why Gmail moved to a new look and why we aren't keeping the old look. I thought maybe Mark or Alex could start us off there, and then we'll get into some of the specific questions.
Okay. So yeah, why we did the new look? I mean, that's something that people probably saw across all of Google. We go for a more common look across all the Google products, making them look and feel more similar, more integrated, because that's actually feedback that we got, and that's also something that we realized, that people feel like, okay, I do something completely different in this product than I do it in this product, although it's pretty much the exact same function. And so what we then did in Gmail is we took this and then we added a couple of ideas that we had for a long time, that we sometimes had as labs or as internal functionality, and said, okay, let's use this as an opportunity to actually bring the UI basically forward to a much more modern UI. And I think Jason can talk a little bit about this, like the different things that we did. But what we ended up with is that the UI changes that we had to do all this were actually pretty complex. It's not a little bit of sort of style sheet rendering or like a different colors or different fonts. We actually had to like change a lot of our front-end code, the JavaScript code, the rendering code and everything. And so what we have today is, with the old and the new look, we basically have two separate code bases that we have to maintain. One is the old one is the new one. And so development, and especially testing right now, is actually slowed down by this, because we have to develop each feature in two places. We have to test it in two places. And then it works, it doesn't work differently, so we have to make specific changes. So the complexity in the code base really increases a lot when you do this. So that's why we ultimately want to delete the old UI at some point in the future, when we feel that we have the new UI in a place where, again, we see the feedback, we see that it's working, we see the latency number, we see the user feedback, all of this, and say, okay, now it seems to be good that we can actually do that.
Yeah. Mark, I just want to add, I've seen some users who prefer the old look say that they'd be happy to have the old look in the state that it is. They don't want any new features that we might develop. My understanding is that that would actually be difficult because of the way that Gmail, there's a place where your data gets stored, or there's the way your messages actually get into your account. Like, I don't know if you maybe want to add anything to, why, that isn't technically the way that it sounds.
I mean, this is something that would maybe work for a month or for 2 months, but with the rate that we make changes in the UI, we would absolutely break the old UI very quickly, because we introduce a button or something that's suddenly critical that we have in one UI we don't have in the other UI. So functionality would stop working, or would work differently suddenly. And again, it really mostly comes down for us to handle the complexity in terms of development and handle the effort in terms of testing, where we want to make changes, we want to actively develop the product, and with these two code bases, it's slowing everything down quite a lot.
And just also to add on that, I mean, I think when you live on a product that is not being kind of actively developed by the team that owns it, then that ends up being a pretty painful experience pretty quickly, because all of these products, new kind of cases occur which end up exposing old bugs that might have been there from a long time ago, or a sudden interaction change happens in the back end, and one of the biggest challenges there is not only are those not being picked up because that's not at the forefront of the team who's developing it, it's also that team who's developing it no longer really has the expertise in that whole interface. So Mark's team wants to concentrate their expertise in kind of the single kind of unified experience for Gmail users, and I think that's absolutely the best way to move forward for Gmail users.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dig into some of the specific questions. So the first question was from Somnath in Calcutta, India. And Somnath wanted to know, why were the color-coded names of respondents in Conversation View dropped? It facilitated faster association between the color and the person vis-a-vis the avatars, which are tiny and aren't much help at first glance.
I can take this if you like. We can also just maybe Jason can also talk a little bit to this too. I mean, the conversation page was one that it's one of those areas I think where Mark was talking about where we wanted for a long time to give it a significant overhaul, because we know that based on user experience testing that we've done and prototypes that we've built, there were significant ways that we could improve the readability of that page. Really, that page is all about being able to kind of read your conversation, understand who's talking at a given moment, and to be able to interact with that conversation as well as you can. And one of the key things that we've seen in those studies was actually the use of avatars generally facilitated that much better than the use of the colored names. So the colored names were pretty good, on the basis of having text and being able to kind of differentiate between the different texts, but it required the user to essentially kind of keep a map in their mind of, which color represents which user. Whereas the avatars are, obviously, to the extent that the user has set them, are generally much more expressive of, exactly who is speaking. And whilst they're small, and we spent actually a bunch of time trying to figure out exactly the right size, how big can you get so that they're visible and understandable, whilst not taking up too much space on the actual card and page. We found in testing that they do actually help people understand who's kind of communicating in different parts of the threads. And then we realized, obviously, that it's not instantly going to be the case that every person you communicate with has their own kind of set avatar, or that you'd set an avatar for them in contacts. And so we actually took the color cycling that we used to do with names and applied it in exactly the same way to avatars that aren't set. So where there isn't an avatar for you to be able to kind of instantly see, oh, that's Manny's avatar, or that's Mark's avatar. We have the color cycling set up in the same way as we did before. Do you want to add anything, Jason?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up. I mean, I think that really one of the things that we wanted to do is make Gmail feel like a more personal space to communicate in. And the avatars just do that much better than the color names ever could.
I've got a comment on that if possible. So for the Google Apps users out there who assuredly will not run into any avatars whatsoever, for the most part, what are our options? It sounds like you said that the color option still exists, but I don't see it in my Gmail iteration. So is that a setting or something that I just missed?
No, so the avatars themselves are colored. So the actual the avatar is gray, and then the picture of the kind of the silhouette is colored based on our old coloring algorithm. The other thing is, I think there is lots of ways in terms of Google Apps accounts to actually kind of connect up contacts to kind of corporate directories and the likes, which often have kind of avatars. And I believe, although I'm not like 100% expert on the contact side of things, that will pull in avatars too. So, I mean, obviously, all of this is kind of focused on what we try and do as well in the back end is whenever we see an email address, we'll do our very best to find an avatar for that user. So, either, first of all, we look at whether you've set an avatar for the user, then we look at see whether the avatar is, the user has set an avatar in Gmail, and, we also look at whether that user has a, a public profile associated with them, and, we're able to pull in the avatar from that. So I think over time you'll see more and more avatars there. Hopefully there are enough ways for that to come in that you'll start to see that happen. But in the meantime, in the situation where we don't have the avatar, we still do that colorization.
Okay, let's go ahead and make one last comment, but then I just want to make sure we have time to get through the other questions. So go ahead, and then we'll move on. But
no problem, I understand. Yeah, just to kind of further that along, I think that sounds like a good idea in theory, but in practice, in sales, dealing with private domains, unless you're assuming that everyone's going to link together their corporate account with their Google Plus account or Google account. I don't see that happening, and unless you're using a really vibrant display, I didn't even notice that there were colors in those avatars. So maybe that's, I don't know, maybe there's some room to tweak that or something. But
so I think that's good feedback. We could definitely look at whether or not we have enough saturation on the colors there. I think that's something that Jason and I can take back and take a look at.
I think that's in general actually like one thing that we can really only find out after we launch this. Things like color saturation or some of the other sort of subtleties that people now request. This is great feedback that we get through the forum or through meetings like this, where we tried a couple of things out. We came up with a good balance between having the colors good enough that you can see them, but also not too strong that they overwhelm the rest of the UI. Then we do user studies, but in the end, this is exactly where we need to get the product out. We need to get comments like this, and to make these changes is actually very, very simple, but that's exactly what we need to find out now. These sort of subtle changes that we can make that don't require us to completely redo something, but that will make the user experience much better.
And there's a very delicate balance to be struck here. I think one of the guiding principles of the new design is specifically to have a sparing use of color. And we're doing that across Google properties. And the idea is to use color specifically to draw attention to the parts of the page that are most important that we want to articulate. So things like searching or composing a new message. And so that did mean that we were a little bit more restrained in our use of color in the rest of the page. We did a lot of testing to try and make sure we're getting this right, but I think it's an area we could probably still improve.
Okay, so speaking of colors, that's a great segue into our next question, which is also from Somnath in Calcutta. Somnath would like to know why the new themes or colors or pictures overwhelm the page, and he says that many would prefer a lesser obtrusive theme.
Sure. So I think taking another look at themes, which we did as part of this redesign, was a really exciting project. One of the things that we wanted to do was create a range of themes that worked for all tastes. And so that ranges from the very sort of minimalist default theme to these incredibly immersive HD themes and everything in between. We have a set of solid color themes that aren't as busy in the background, and we have a set of pattern themes that aren't as busy in the background. So our goal was really to support a range of tastes. We have some users that absolutely love the more immersive themes, and we have other users that don't like them so much, but that's why we created a range, was to give something for everybody.
Yeah, there's actually kind of a follow-up question that I think kind of gets to this, designing something for everybody, which is from Hugo. He wanted to know how the new look themes were developed and evaluated for usability. And in particular, he's talking about people who find, he says, Gmail hard to look at with only the high contrast theme acceptable. And he wanted to know a little bit more kind of about the high contrast theme.
Sure. So, I mean, this was the biggest design change in Gmail's history. So we worked very hard to do our homework, and we did a lot of testing. This ranged from, in the very beginning, doing sort of aesthetic and desirability studies, trying to understand, with the new design guidelines that we were starting to develop at the time, what people liked and what people didn't like. That also ranged to giving users, over long periods of time, the themes to use. And we also did a lot of testing internally with Googlers, specifically around the low vision issues. So we have a set of Googlers that try and really help us nail how we develop products for people with less than perfect vision. So we gave these users the themes to use over a period of time, and we made quite a few changes based on their feedback to try and nail the balance between the sort of aesthetic qualities that we were going for and the ability for users to see what was going on. With respect to the high vision theme, we specifically worked with low vision experts at Google to come up with the combination of factors that was going to be most legible. And that ended up being black on light gray, which isn't technically the highest contrast, but it turns out that is actually the color combination that's easiest to use for the largest range of people with vision impairment. So we tried sort of every trick in the book, basically. We did testing with users in the lab. We did testing with lots of Googlers. We gave people outside of the lab the themes, the opportunity to use the themes over time, and we relied on expert advice.
The other thing I'd also add is I think this is an area where we've actually also made some changes after launching externally as well. So outside of the high contrast theme, we also realized that in the range of environments that our external users were using Gmail, we'd actually got the contrast, the opacity of the buttons in the HD themes wrong. And we had them too opaque, and there was too much interaction between what was going on in the background and what was happening in the foreground. Now, the opacity is one of the things that users who love the themes told us they loved. So we had to be really kind of careful about this. But we actually made a pretty significant change there to make them more opaque after we launched as a result of the feedback. We also, another area I think here where we made a change was we darkened the line separating conversations within the conversation view, separating each message within the conversation view, again, as a result of some of the feedback that we'd be getting after we'd launched. So this is kind of an ongoing process. I mean, the development of Gmail has always been an ongoing process, and I think it will continue to be. So, you know, we don't kind of take a waterfall approach to these things. You know, we're constantly listening to the feedback and trying to make sure that we have it right. But we're also trying to make sure that we balance the feedback that we get from, you know, the set of users that is having you know, challenges in a particular area with the feedback that we're getting from users that happen to love that area. So, you know, it's very challenging. We have, you know, a lot of users and, you know, we're using the product in lots of different environments. And so, as Jason said, we do try and come up with options as well as making changes to across the board that we think are going to be kind of beneficial to both camps.
I think this might be a good time if any of the users, oh, somebody's dinging. If anybody wants to ask a question, and then we'll go back to the moderator list of questions after that. I think Manny started to say something. Manny, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was. I've got a couple of questions. Why was it deemed necessary to change the format of something that worked well? And as it did, why could the other places this was supposedly made to look like not copied to Gmail for a format that actually worked? You look at Google Plus, it's far more lucid than Gmail is now.
Alex, that sounds like maybe one for you and Jason.
I'm not sure I understood the question, actually. I'm having trouble hearing that one.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an echo.
I think that, Manny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the question was, you know, why is it necessary to change Gmail, you know, at all, given that it, you know, it worked really well the way that it was, and, you know, why couldn't, like, other properties actually, if we wanted to do this kind of unification, why couldn't we actually move more towards the way that Gmail had looked previously? Is that a good summary?
That's a good summary.
Okay. So, I mean, Jason and I can definitely talk about that. I mean, I think there's kind of, you know, I guess a couple of things. One, overall, we as an overall company, Google wanted to make this change, you know, across all of our products. You know, we felt like the unification was important. We had good feedback from folks that, you know, the differences in user interface were kind of jarring, and, you know, we felt like that we weren't really putting our best foot forward there. So I think that was the point around kind of why we felt like we needed to do that. And then we also just wanted to take that opportunity to really think about the design of Google as a whole and what we wanted to achieve with that. You know, and really think hard about each of the individual products too. But in a way that I don't think we ever really had done as a company before. So that, you know, the design of the individual products previously had kind of just grown up to where they were, and I don't think they were actually where any of us really wanted them to be, you know, because we'd never taken that holistic look at them. Jason can talk a bit about, I think, the objectives that brought us to where we ended up, I think, with the new look.
So I think as a company, there are a few design objectives that we had. One was to bring all our products into one sort of aesthetic family so that they all looked more similar. But another was to really focus on the content and have the sort of stuff around the content, the UI, fade to the background. I think if you're actually if you've been using Gmail for a really long time, most of our users absolutely love it. But if you're coming into Gmail for the first time, it had actually gotten pretty complicated and somewhat overwhelming. So one of the things that we wanted to do as part of this redesign is to bring things in just a little bit to strike what we thought was a better compromise, so that your content really shines. It's really easy for you to have conversations, but all the power that the Gmail users were used to was still there. And that's a constant balancing act. It's something that we're still working on, I would say.
There's actually sort of a follow-up question that Brett has on this. He says he's not sure if his mic is going to work, so I don't know. Let's see if Brett can ask, and then he pinged it to me, so I'll try to ask it if he can. But go ahead, Brett, if you can. Give him like 3 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to guess that his mic is not working. So he said that we've received a lot of feedback on the new look, including some valid comments on usability, and Google has said that we're listening. So Brett wanted to know when we can start to see some of the more painful issues being addressed. And I think if we need any clarification, these are things like the spacing and conversation view, differentiation between messages, which Alex, maybe you could talk about what we've done so far with that. The way that the buttons change, or the fact that we have text instead of icons on the buttons. I'm sorry, the fact that we have icons rather than text on the buttons, backwards.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think some changes have already come through. So we're already, there are already some pieces that have come through the process, and we're still working on, enhancements on the basis of feedback. Some of these pieces are more complex than others. So for instance, a more compact conversation view is something that we definitely do want to do. We've been working on the exact specification for that, and we hope to get that out in the not too distant future. That area of Gmail, that view of Gmail, is one of the most complex things that we have in the product. It's it's the area where we're displaying the messages. We have message collapsing, threading, etc., kind of all happening in there. So it does actually take us a little while to kind of make some of those things happen. Some of the other areas are areas where we're constantly essentially when we get feedback around some of these issues, what we're trying to do is parse that feedback in the round. And really understand, how it relates to other feedback that we're getting about the product, both good and bad, and what the impact will be, on these users and on other users, and across the board. So, obviously, whenever there is an issue that a particular user would like fixed, then the benefit of fixing that is to make that user happy, and we would love to do that. What we do when we get that feedback is try and understand, okay, well, so how many users does this feedback really apply to? How many people are having these issues? And then on the flip side as well, how many users are, why did we design the feature the way that we designed it? And what were the benefits associated with that? And how many users are currently reaping those benefits and might lose some of them if we made this change? So we're trying to make that trade-off, which means we can't always just kind of react 100% to a piece of feedback that says, okay, I feel that I would be more efficient if the buttons were text rather than icons, or because we have to kind of consider the round there of kind of all of the users using Gmail. That said, as I say, I think it's like a continuous process. So it's as with kind of all changes to Gmail. When we're talking earlier about features outside of the new look, I wasn't really generally able to tell you, like, in the next 1 week we'll be adding this integration with Google Docs, or in the next 3 weeks we'll be adding the ability to search from using the circle labels, because we're iteratively developing the product. And that iterative development is taking into account both the features that we want to add to it, the goals that we have for it, and really importantly, the feedback that we're getting for it. It's we've always had great feedback from Gmail users, and we've always tried to incorporate it in our plans. So I think on some of these issues, the answer is they fall into a number of different camps. They fall into camps where we've made some changes. They maybe don't go as far as a particular user wants, but we're trying to make a compromise between all of the users. We're working on some changes, and I can't tell you exactly when they're going to come, but they will come. And other areas where we feel like the change might be detrimental to the overall user base, and so we're being a little bit more cautious about it. It doesn't mean to say we're not doing it, and it doesn't mean to say absolutely that we're not saying that it's really good feedback and that it's completely valid. It just means that we're trying to make trade-offs in a pretty complex world when we make these decisions.
Yeah, one thing that I might want to add to this is, it might feel to some people that we take quite a lot of time to make such adjustments and changes, but what we have to do in this case is everybody here at Google, even within the Gmail team, had the same reaction. You get a new UI, and initially you just don't like it because it's different from what you had before. So people need some time to sort of get used to the UI, get used to how to use the UI. So the feedback that we get after a while is the really valid feedback when people say, okay, I use this now for 4 weeks. I still can't do X, or I still don't understand why this is here. So that's why we take some time with the new UI to let people use it, and then we monitor things like the forum, but also our internal stats. How often do people press a certain button? How do people navigate to really understand, okay, do people get back to where they were before? Are they even better than they were before? Or are there really areas now in the product where people really seem to have a problem still after some time? So that's this additional lag that just comes into this, because we don't want to react to the initial reaction. We want to react to the reaction that people have after a while, that they say, look, I tried it, overall I can use it, but there's some parts that are still suboptimal.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think those long-term issues that people are having are ones that we absolutely want to fix, and the combination of it's a longer-term issue and a lot of people are experiencing it. Those are the ones that are our highest priority for us to look at. The other thing I would say is really don't underestimate the complexity of a product like Gmail from an engineering point of view. It may seem like to the outside world like we just kind of birthed the new UI on people like back in November of last year, but it was really many months and many people for many months working to pull that together. And so these changes, when we make changes, we always want to be both cautious about the impact on users, but also cautious about the impact on the code base, and making sure that we move it. We kind of are making the appropriate pace forward in terms of development, but are also doing so in a way that's sensitive and not introducing bugs and unhappiness elsewhere.
I think that's really a good insight and really good description of how we approach the problems. We are, I think, running short on time, so maybe we can just, there's like 3 more questions. I want to try to see if we can do like a 10-second answer or 30-second answer, and then we'll wrap up. So the first question was from Somnath again in India, and he wants to know what happened to the print draft email option in the new Gmail. Maybe Alex, a 10-second answer.
Yeah, so basically when we were putting this together, we always used to, for single composed, or for new composed messages, show those in the conversation view after they'd been in a draft. And we realized that actually most of what people wanted to do there was actually go back and edit the message that they'd started. And therefore we could actually start showing those in the full compose view and give people a bit more space to breathe, and a view that was designed specifically with that in mind. A side effect of that was that compose view has never had the ability to kind of print a draft from it, and therefore it went away for that. We looked at it, and again we kind of tried to prioritize it in the round. We felt like the vast majority of users are actually coming to that screen in order to edit, and so therefore we wanted to give people that capability. We'll definitely look at adding print draft back to that screen in the future, just as soon as we can figure out a way that we think it will work, and prioritize that amongst all of the other kind of developments that we want to make.
All right, we have a question from Eric G. in Southwest Asia, who feels that we didn't give enough thought to deployed military users of Gmail that have to use an older browser, and would it be possible to use the old look when there's an incompatibility issue instead of basic HTML? Mark, that sounds like one for you.
I mean, it comes back to what I said earlier. Like keeping the old look around indefinitely or for a long time is pretty much something that we can't do, because it would slow down many other things that we do. With regards to this specific thing, that like the support for old browsers, it's actually something that we announced, I think, over a year ago now. That we actually said, look, there's a couple of older browsers, IE6, one of the most prominent one. That it got really hard to develop a complex application like Gmail for. And so we used this now, this UI redesign, to basically get rid of some of the old code and say, look, if we do this now, modern browsers have better capabilities, can do the same things, or can do better things, can do things faster. So we used a lot of these modern capabilities to actually make the UI better and faster, and also make development easier. So we basically did, with the new UI rollout, we did what we told everybody already 9 months earlier, and says, look, we have to stop supporting these old browsers with this very modern UI, because it just gets way too complex and way too hard. And that's what we have the HTML UI for. If you really have to use it, you can use it. It's also a fairly fast UI, not as feature-rich. But that's the compromise that we had to take here.
All right. I think Jason had a question about signatures. If you want to go ahead and ask that, Jason. Oh, you're muted. You might have to unmute.
Basically...
Go ahead.
Is that unmuted?
We're just a lag. Go for it.
Basically, okay, signatures are getting trimmed off on both Google Apps and on regular Google. For any email I send, it's very difficult to try to find a signature that doesn't get trimmed off. Even the salutation will get trimmed off. Something like, best regards, whatever. Everything gets trimmed off when I send it. And I don't know if it's necessarily just a Gmail reading issue, or if it's a sending issue and it actually pushes that signature into the quoted material. But it's probably the only thing that really annoys me in Gmail.
I'm sorry that there's anything in Gmail that really annoys you. That's bad. So actually, I mean, Gmail has always actually had the approach of kind of trimming and hiding extraneous text from emails. The way that emails work, a lot of kind of extraneous text like quoted text and the likes gets included in emails. And so and that's made it, in particular in conversation view, very difficult to kind of parse an email, and that's why we were hiding that. One of the changes that we made here was what we'd previously been doing with signatures was kind of showing them in a very light gray. I think in the old look, so there is basically a relatively well accepted specification for how to kind of detect signatures across various different email providers, and we'd been showing them in light gray. What we felt was that we took the opportunity here to actually just kind of put them into the quoted text part of the email inside Gmail, because again, when we ran studies with users that were kind of reading conversations, what we tended to find was that the actual kind of footers and kind of signatures were actually just causing them to make it more difficult for them to actually read the conversation. So they were actually kind of breaking up the flow of the conversation, because users were telling us, well, I can see who sent me the mail, in the top part of the conversation. I know who's talking to me through this. I then have these like 3 or 4 extraneous lines before I move down. So what we did was we put them into that hidden piece. It's pretty easy again to kind of get at them. You just kind of click on the little ellipsis, and there they are. But in our studies, we basically found that led to a really good improvement in readability on the recipient end. And so that's why we kind of added that additional trimming.
All right. I think with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Hangout. Sorry we didn't have time to get through more questions, but thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Alex and Jason and Mark, for answering questions, and Brett, Jason, Manny, and Warren for being here and asking us questions. So, bye everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. It's been
Thanks,
great
everybody.
talking to you.
Thank you.
Bye.